about mentally ill parents. There are parents and there are toxic family dynamics, dysfunctional families where, parents just don't, something doesn't seem right. They don't secure you enough, make you feel safe enough, worry about your well-being. They kind of flip back and forth. It could be anything, but it's an instability. And when you're a child, you need stability. Okay? You need to know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen. You need some structure and routine. Many of us grow up without it, but it is a necessity to raise a child to have some sense of self and their place in the world and how they should be and what they need to know. So when you have a parent who is undiagnosed or unaware of their mental health issues, it can make life really hard. As more and more I talk to people, I realize that one thing I don't think we hear enough of is that you can say, my mother said she had depression or whatever, but a lot of times these things go unidentified, unknown. They don't talk to no one. They'll hear things or read things or watch videos, but they don't get an official from a mental health person that they do have a mental health. Now, mental health illness does not have to be severe. It could be just generalized anxiety. You can have a panic disorder. You can have depression where you just get sad, the cyclothymic type where you're not ever too happy, you never too sad, never too happy. You're just, kind of monotone. But there's different types of behaviors and illnesses your family could have outside of alcoholism, drug use, and all of that. If your parent is depressed and deals with depression, they can't show up for you the way you need them to show up for you. They can't encourage you the way you need. You may find a role reversal, whereas you trying to figure out how they can feel better, or always find yourself trying to please them, or you can't please them, or they're never happy about anything. They're upset about this. They have, they're disgruntled about that. They just not a happy, they never have a happy streak. And if they do, you're waiting for it to end because they're going to flip, get mad, or just switch on you. And I'm saying this because many times people think their parents behave a certain way because that's how they are. That's who they are. And a lot of times these parents don't even know that they have an issue. They don't know if they have an attention issue, where they're unable to pay attention. They don't know if they're skipping around doing different things because they have some type of anxiety or something that they're dealing with. They don't know. Many times when you're dealing with something, or if you yourself have ever felt like something's going on, I need help, like I can't pull myself out of this, whatever's going on, you may need an outside source to help you get yourself together so you can function every day. And a lot of times many people don't. They may smoke, drink, hang out, sex, fight, name it. They do other things that put in place instead of dealing with things in a fashion to change and make things better. Many people are used to what they're used to. They know what they know. If my father always yell and scream, I yell and scream, my son yell and scream, that could be a learned behavior. And it could be learned from someone who has a childhood history that is, it could be something awful. They could have went through things, because there are some parents who don't tell you everything about their growing up. They don't have to. They don't, it's up to them. But a lot of what happened and how they were raised and what they saw and how they seen things, what they were taught, it gets passed to you. And another thing, sometimes these parents who had their opportunity to become parents, they realize, okay, now I'm over someone. No one can tell me what to do. So they kind of winging it. Not that a lot of us don't, but if you're struggling to give structure, to be consistent, to be caring, just the basic things a child needs, and it's getting to a point where you feel your parent don't like you, or they're always ruining things, or things just don't go well. You expect an adult to come and make things feel better, but they don't. They kind of add to it, and then you'll have to figure out how to get along and go along with the situation. You know, they can overreact to things. They can yell at the wrong time, and a lot of times they don't apologize. When a person has a mental illness and it's not significant where they need to be hospitalized and nothing like that, which most and many are not, they can walk around and live with it. There's medication to help you. A lot of people don't want to hear that. And I understand medication is not the answer to everything. You have to learn how to change. But sometimes if your history of trauma is so deep and you've learned to deal with things and cope with things in a not so positive way, be it people or substances or just not having stability in your life, there's something going on. And a lot of times the children will just learn to, you know, get in where they fit in. And if this is how mama is, that's how you deal with it. That's how daddy is, that's how you deal with it. The problem is, what do you do to change it? And if you don't know there's a problem, then you might think your parent actually hates you. They're hitting on you because they hate you. There could be something wrong with them. You know, other than just judgment of how to give consequences or, you know, make boundaries, they don't know how to do that. So they react emotionally, you know, and your emotions are not very honest with you. You know, your emotions, you have to make head over heart decisions. Sometimes you have to learn how to do that. And I would advise anyone to learn how to understand what your mind is telling you versus what your heart is telling you, because you can confuse that with intuition. If you have a history of hardship and hurt and pain, sometimes you can have a natural instinct to feel something. But if you don't know that it comes from a painful place, you'll mistake that for intuition. You know, and you could just misjudge so many things. You can overly judge things, and you can make decisions that affect other people long term that they can't undo, especially if you're a parent. Well, I feel you didn't have to go to that school, or I felt, or I thought. And it's not coming from a place, and I'm not saying that makes you not well, but if you're not thinking clearly, if you're not able to separate what's going on from how you feel, because a lot of it, these parents act off emotions. Regular people too, but I'm talking about parenting now. Because your parent could be mean, yelling, ornery, just hard to deal with, or they could be quiet, walking away, not coming around. You don't always know what it is, but we don't give it enough attention that mom, dad, or auntie, whoever, could be living with a mental illness where they were depressed and it could have been helped, but now the depression has gone on so long. You know, they found other ways to deal with it that are not healthy. You know, they could be around people who are just like them, or people who you don't see why they're around them. And it could be their emotions. It could be how their mind is working at the time. They just want release from feeling bad, so they're doing other things. And a lot of times, parenting has a lot of responsibility. And if you're not stable and things happen, you can really, you know, be verbally harmful. It could happen physically as well. You can overreact. You can underreact. You can neglect. You can do these things out of not even knowing that what you're doing is hurting. And what makes it bad is that other people who don't expect more of you or that parent, they'll just watch it. You know, oh, that's how they are. You know how they are. A lot of times these parents, you know, they weren't taught to talk about their feelings, or they did, and they were made fun of because you're not supposed to talk about your feelings. So now that talking about your feelings is popular, the last 15 years or so, people still struggle with that. And if a woman is dealing with control issues, or a man's dealing with control issues that came from another time in their life or another place in their life, and now you can't go here, you can't do that, you can't think, you know, they can pass that on to you. And it's not because that's what they would do if they were their best self. You know, so that's one of the reasons why it's really important to take care of you, take care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, because when you're dealing with other people, they're dealing with what you got going on. If you are in a place of position of making decisions and you're not your best self, you can't make the best decisions for them. And many people do this for many years, and they look back mad, upset, and hurt, like, what happened to me? why did this happen this way? And it's because you may be in an environment where the people who raised you needed help. They don't know. They need healing. They need education. They need to want to change. They need to recognize it's a problem instead of that's just how we do. So that's a little snippet on a huge subject. But let me know if you want to hear more about it. I can, break it down, get specific about it. But I just think it's important to know that parents, people who have children, can have a mental health issue where they're not functioning well enough to manage that child. It could be a family history of it. It could be incident that occurred. But sometimes, I think in many cases, the parent has a problem. And it doesn't have to be drinking alcohol or drugs. It could be a mental health issue that even leads to that. Parents can have mental health issues. And no one will say a thing, especially if that's not common in the community, which many communities is not, to talk about so-and-so who got all those kids who work every day. You don't talk about her. You try to see what you can do or just watch her. You don't ever point them out. So I just want to put it out there. Parents can be mentally ill. They could be not well and not know better. Or they can know they need help and refuse to do it. And so you have to live with the pain of them not getting better. And they can be well aware of it. We are allowed to make decisions good or bad. Okay? So just keep in mind, not everyone who has a child or is able to have a child or raise a child is in their best mental space. Okay? And we can take on their behaviors personally, and you probably shouldn't, especially if they're not even aware they're not okay. So I wanted to let you know, put that out there.